Here with Ron Shreve, Nick Sachs. Tell me about the play.
Just straight about the play?
Yeah, let's jump right into it.
Well, it's a emo rock modern interpretation of the historical events of Andrew Jackson's presidency.
Mm-hmm.
So it's told in a more palpable style for those who may not have history as their strong suit, somebody like myself.
What makes Andrew Jackson such a compelling subject for you?
Well, I mean, historically, Andrew Jackson was this, hot-headed, violent, whiskey-drinking man who was pretty headstrong in everything that he did. He was very passionate. One thing that drove him most was his passion for equality, for the frontiersmen, for equal representation of all, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't something that was being shown in his time. And Jackson was just sort of this, I don't know if I'd go as far to say ruthless, but I think I would, just in the sense of where he did whatever it took for what he thought was right to happen, I guess you could say. And he was just he's one of the most radical figures of history, in my opinion. There's this story that this lady who's serving as dramaturg on our show shared with us, of where when Jackson was in his first and only year in Congress, Thomas Jefferson told the story that when he was in Congress, Jackson used to get so passionate and so heated and so fired up that he would stand up, but was so furious and full of rage with everything that was going on that literally was not able to form a word, and then had to sit back down because he was too emotionally invested, I guess, in it. And he was also the people's president by far, which is something that put him apart from other political figures of his time, and even now, that he really was the president for the people. He wanted what the people wanted, and he wanted that to be shown through his presidency. He created the Democratic Party. And then on top of it, he took like 7 states just on his own. He was the self-made leader of a militia that just ruthlessly tore through Florida, killed all these Spanish, forced Indians out without really sort of any approval from the American government. Just kind of did what he wanted to do and did it. I don't know.
I think what makes it such a compelling subject matter, though, to make a play about is especially in reference to Jacksonville, with everything that's going on, the city's really changing. The people are really trying to take it in their hands between Jack's 2025 and One Spark. So I think its relevance to here is the idea of the voice of the people. Sure, you can debate, and it's still debated, whether he was a hero or a villain, but you can't deny that he did listen to the people and he did promote change. I just don't think the people realized what they were asking for.
Yes.
And I think that's when they saw him take a step back and realized, if you want something done, and that's what Jacksonville's doing right now. The people have kind of taken it into their hands to change things for the better.
That's true.
So I really think that's where for me as the director, I'm really trying to relate this show to the city where, it's his namesake, and the man's never even been here. So for me, the show in its conception is kind of like, let's show Jackson what he was missing. Let's show Jackson what Jacksonville is.
From your experience, how is Jacksonville like Andrew Jackson? What can you see? Some of maybe some traits to Jackson that exist in this city now.
I think the one thing that is fine. Everyone here has we're starting to change it, but a lot of people in the past that I've noticed, because I'm new to Jacksonville, I've only lived here within the last year. But I'm originally from Hawaii, but I went to school at the University of Florida, so I'm familiar with Jacksonville. And Jacksonville, at one point when I was here, was very there's a group of people who are very strong on their stance, and they wanted to keep it that way. And there's another group of people very strong on their stance, whatever it may be. And I think now we're coming to a time of really collaboration and really coming together and co-working. It's the only way this city is going to exist. And I think that's what his intention was. But then a man in power just kind of went crazy and took over.
Mm-hmm. How did the project present itself to you guys? Was it presented to you, or did you specifically go seeking this out?
No, it was in the Players by the Sea season already. I had just recently directed a show called All New People for the Five and Dime, which was met with some great success, which was really great, and from word of mouth and everything. And I really have I'm going to pat myself on the back here, a knack for getting people to really want to work together, to get artists to have a sense of ownership over the piece of theater they're doing. And so I was brought in to kind of create an event, not just a show, but a theatrical event for the summer that would really showcase different artists, collaborators, not in the normal sense that a show would collaborate, but even to the next level. So that's how it was presented to me. It was actually offered to me, would I like to direct the show? And I read the show, and it really just kind of spoke to. I had just come off of Jax 2025 on One Spark, or Jax 2025 is still going on right now, but I just come off all this change and stuff, and I was like, well, let's use this show as a way to say something about the current state of Jacksonville, not just do a show for entertaining sake. So that's how it was presented to me. That's how I wanted to move forward with it.
How does this compare logistically to other productions that the group has done?
Logistically, in what sense?
Well, is there more involved in terms of props, in terms of resources or preparation?
Well, usually you get a show, you get a musical director and a choreographer, and it's kind of like segmented. The choreographer does their job, musical director does their job, director. And in this case, we really try to. Somebody told me, they were like, wow, you're like the painter and your actors are like your paintbrush. And I was like, well, that's really hard to say because my paintbrushes have brains and personalities. So it was really about really bringing them into the project. The cast has really created a lot of the show. And so it's different in terms of anybody who's involved really had a major hand in the production. It really wasn't just my vision, do what I say, and create it. It was about this idea of co-working, collaboration. We have artists, which normally doesn't happen, showcasing their work on stage as part of the set pieces. We have musicians playing in the lobby and stuff like that who aren't part of the show, they're just showcasing themselves. We even went as far as, we have a costume designer, but we also have fashion lines from inside the city who are showcasing their works on people. So not only are you seeing the show, but you're kind of seeing Jacksonville and all of its elements together in one place. So it's really kind of an artist series for various different artists of different mediums.
And even to touch a lot on personally what this, I guess, process has had, that a lot of processes in Jacksonville and even nationally, was that there was this sense of group collaboration, which really reflects Andrew Jackson, like wanting it to be a collaborative effort, wanting to have the people's voice. And it really was. It was if Ron was Andrew Jackson and we were the people, he was very much so listening to our voice in the aspect. And culminating this entire show was a huge group effort. It wasn't just one side. It wasn't just like normal. You bring in a choreographer and it's like, all right, here we're gonna work on this for an hour. We're gonna set the whole piece and you're gonna do it. It was very organic in that sense, where they wanted to see what came from us first, and then once we produced something, then they would mold it to what they needed it to be, and then that would end up being the final product. And even to this day, which is really cool in our rehearsal safe space, is that there is no final product until the curtain goes up, because things keep morphing and evolving and changing, and that's something that in this show and in this process that is not normal, especially to Jacksonville, but I think anywhere, unless it's of course a company that is made for that very reason. But just to have a show in its season and to have this sort of process is phenomenal, very different.
How many different companies have taken on this project in the past?
Buddy.
What? And this is the East Coast. This is the Florida.
The East Coast premiere.
The Florida East. Northeast, Northeast from here.
But I mean, there've been several. I mean, it was on Broadway. It's now off Broadway.
Yeah, is it still off? It went from Broadway to the public.
Right. It's not off Broadway.
Yeah, and then it closed on the public. Yeah.
But I mean, it's open for rights now. It's been played in several places, especially along the coastline. This coastline. Less along the west coastline.
When you, on a project like this, or in other projects, when you do something that's had a life previously with other companies, is there a sense of competition in terms of, like, say the way a symphony orchestra might approach a particular piece of music.
No, only because in that sense, and a lot of people do work theater this way, like the symphony orchestra metaphor is you have the piece, and it's about like the gusto or the way in which you do that piece within its confines. With this show, what we did, and the original writer kind of gives you the liberty to, we took a little more freedom. We went a little off what the stage directions are for this show, so it's a lot different than it's very different from the other productions that have been done. So there's no sense of competition in that sense. The competition is within ourselves. How do we make this better, and how do we make this more palpable for the audience? How do we make this something that Jacksonville's going to remember? And we've really been like blasting social media and really getting the word out there. And the other great part is that the cast themselves, as opposed to just being about themselves, has really supported other art in the area and everything else. So we're actually not about competition. Actually, the whole thing is about working together. As graphic and as bloody and as there's so much swearing in this show, as much as hostile as it seems, it's actually quite a peace pipe of a show, really.
How old are you guys?
I'm 26.
I'm 19.
Tell me a bit about about some of the other people involved in the show.
I'll let you take this because I gotta go pay my meter. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, we have our choreographer, I guess you could say, Jess Pillmore, who has a theater company. I wish Ron has a local theater company. When he gets back, I'll ask him what the name was, because her and her husband have a local theater company, and they do a lot of stuff around here and up the East Coast. And then our musical director is Jocelyn Geronimo, who is phenomenal. Which is really cool in the show is that the band. How normally in a show you have the orchestra or the band and they play for the show, and there's not really much of a relationship between the performers and the band. Well, in this show the band is in the show, like the band are characters in the show. So she just leads this when we have a band, but I can already tell she just has this rock and roll presence that are just that is just phenomenal. And so that'll be fun. And then we have Matt Morgan is vocally directing the show, and he's done stuff in and out of Jacksonville. He was a professional opera singer for a while, and then came back here to, I guess, have family for a bit, and he's vocally directing the show. And then we have why am I blanking on everyone's name? In the cast, though, we have Daniel Austin, who is he's part of the Cultural Council of Jacksonville, I believe. Again, Ron will have all the specifics of this. I'm sort of just sorry about that.
Oh no.
But and he's been very proactive in the social media and getting our name out there. I mean, he's been they just started this thing called Bloody Igers Jacks or something, Bloody Igers, which is like Instagrammers of Jacksonville, and they have this whole contest now where if you take a picture with a $20 bill, which is the Jackson, somewhere around Jacksonville, and you submit it to this Instagram account, then there's a chance of winning tickets and like dinner to a show or to the show or something like that. And he's been the force in moving all of this social media and getting our name out there. And he also has been our bridge to he's a huge part in the Jax 2025 thing, and to I wish JCCI what is that?
Jacksonville Community Council.
That's what he's a part of. He's and I think he's public. I don't know. When Ron gets back, he is the more specifics. And then otherwise, our cast is really. It's really cool because it ranges in age from like 18 to 30, but everyone looks like they're like 20. So it has this real youthful energy that really I think lights up the show and gives it a little bit more life. Not saying that you couldn't do it, with older members, but just I feel like the ensemble that we've created and the people that we have here are have formed such a cohesive unit that, like, I don't know, the age doesn't really matter, but there's a huge age. I didn't know people's ages until like 2 weeks ago. I just never thought to ask, because it was just one of those things where, like, we bond, we click. There's a mutual energy here, and it works. And
how old is your character? The point when the play starts.
He starts out as a 4-year-old.
You play him as a 4-year-old?
Mm-hmm, for a few scenes, and then it shows his progression through. Childhood to when he was 13, and he got captured by the British, and then was eventually released, and then it goes into him becoming a younger adult and forming these militias to fight sort of unconstitutionally, I guess you could say, or without much permission from the government, and then it just shows his progression into presidency, and then what he did as a president, and then after he was president. But what is really cool that they do is that Jackson, while he didn't become president until he was 61, sort of had this youthful. He was probably 19 mentally his entire life.
Yes.
So, what this show
very
is
robust physically.
Very robust physically, very, very violent, very fierce, very, everything. And while he sorry, I lost my. What this showed it isn't a caricature of Jackson anyway. It's sort of just this, like, they put it. Jennifer said it so well last night. It was this.
It's more about, like, the visceral emotion.
The visceral emotion that creates Jackson of what his legacy is. So, I was talking to Ron about this earlier. Granted, he does start as a 4-year-old and ends, as a 7-year-old man, or as the show would, or as it would be, historically. But there's sort of this 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old persona, or not persona, but energy that sort of carries him through the whole show. So the aging, it's not so much about how he ages through the show, but it's how he matures through the show, and I guess just his emotional journey, and how he acted when he was younger opposed to how he acted when he gained more experience, I guess. We were talking about earlier about do you know what Jess's theater company is called?
I could find that out. I should know that. But I think the idea there that you're trying, like, the ideal, it's this: how do you maintain those 20-year-old ideals when you're in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s, when everyone else has kind of let those go? How do you, that Peter Pan aspect? And there's a lot of people who don't want to let go of those youthful ideas because they feel it's what promotes change, and it's got this energy in it. And it's how do you be that president that still can be that way, but is surrounded by all of these people who are naysayers, or surrounded by all these people who think there's a stigma to the way things have to be. And so
still a problem today.
It's still, exactly, and they do make mention in this show, that in the show he becomes president and the people are really excited, and it's supposed to have the same idea of, like, when Obama came to presidency, that idea of the people have been heard. And so there's a lot of relation to it. They even though we're in the, like, 18 to early 1900s here, they do a really good job of using terminology that's not only just, like, modern for today's sake, but modern in the idea of, 1950s. They mention, like, un-American activities, which didn't happen until, like, HUAC and the House of Un-American Activities Committee with blackballing people, which again is a displacement. So it's just this idea of the repetitive nature of history, and no matter how much we want things to change, I mean, look at this displacement of Indians. It's just a metaphorical representation of, the abolitionist and slave movement, and then, the gay rights movement. And so there's just all of these things that it represents there. And so that's why the show is more about the visceral idea behind these political moves, as opposed to the actual historical events that are happening.
Which is interesting, because especially today, because, the last day or two, I've seen a lot of, like, political activity. At that abortion bill that was killed at the last minute in Texas, Defensive Marriage Act struck down by the Supreme Court today. Like, how would you describe, like, the proper relationship between citizens and their political leaders? like there's a bit of a give and take, but a lot of times people are just waiting for the politicians to move, and then the politicians will say, well, I can't move because I'm waiting on the people, they're watching the polls and this and that.
I think it's a huge problem in the show, even
because Jackson seemed like someone who just, when he felt something needed to be done, just he went and did it and didn't wait for anybody's permission.
And I think what's there is like sometimes the people, because it's not really their responsibility, they know they get to throw it on somebody else eventually. And I think that's where the problem is. People want change, they want this and this and this and this, and then when this and this and this and this is enacted by that political figure, it's, oh, there were those repercussions, we didn't realize that. So I think it's kind of bringing people to a sense of awareness, which is happening more today, is that you have to have a larger stance and bigger stakes in what you want to change. You can't just say you want it. What are you going to do to enact that as well? What are you going to do to help those political figures, enact that change for you? Are you going to have the voice that says, I want this, but make sure that we do this? There isn't really that. It's kind of a generalization. I want this change. Well, there's a lot that needs to go into that, and so it needs to be more about people realizing that they need to take more responsibility for it as well, not just laying it on the political figures, because it's just a man. That man's going to do what he thinks is right, ultimately. So there's that whole idea of free will of the people. It kind of gets muddled there, and I think it's just a matter of letting people know that you need to have a greater knowledge about what you're asking for. You need to have a greater knowledge about how your nation works. There's a really big, it's a funny piece, but Jackson actually won the 6th presidency, and somehow there was some back house little dealing with all the other presidents that John Quincy Adams became president, and it's done in this really politically satired way, but it's a really great representation. You don't know what happens behind those closed doors of the White House.
Democrat loses a shady election to the son of a former president.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Something's not right there.
Exactly.
How many performances are you doing? Well, first of all, what's the capacity of the theater, or the venue?
Oh my God, theater seats. I don't know. I believe it's 100 people.
Okay.
It's a little bit over 100, I think.
Because they added in additional seats and stuff. But we have, it's 4 weekends. It's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah, July 12th through August 2nd.
Right. And it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday shows. Currently, there may be additional shows, but they haven't decided that yet. But so right now we have 12 performances.
Is it you guys are both professionals in this business? Does the project challenge your own skills? Where does this rank in terms of creative difficulty, things you've done before?
As a director, for me, I'm not one for plug and play, which is a lot of what community theater is. You get somebody to volunteer to be a director and everything, and it's just kind of this is the way show's written, exit stage, left stage, right, blah, blah, blah. I'm somebody who really likes to tackle each project with a new breath and a new life, and I've challenged them to the nth degree. I'm a very physical person. In addition to being a director, I'm an aerialist and a dancer, and so physicality and movement is a really big thing for me. So I've really tried to, and with all the collaboration, I've really tried to mix all of these elements. There's color guard, there's aerial work, there's everything. So I have a lot on my plate trying to bring all these pictures together, so that's a challenge, and for them, they have to implement it for me, which is an even greater challenge. A lot of these people have not been faced with this. What's great about the cast, though, is that in Jacksonville, I've noticed you tend to see the same people on stage over and over and over again in their respective theaters. And Jacksonville is starting to realize that there's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of talent in Jacksonville. One Spark showed that, I really think. And what we've done here is there's tons of new people to the theater community on this stage this time. There's tons of people in the cast who have never been on Players by the Sea stage. And just trying, it's kind of a microcosm of Jacksonville. This is new artists, different people, pool of talent that you have to pull from. So it's been a really big challenge for them. I know that. I can say that.
Personally, I guess my challenge with this, not even with the process has been. I mean, with every process, there's minor setbacks, and there's things you don't have planned because you can't really plan life, and things happen, and you deal with them as it comes. But the process as a whole has been very nurturing, I guess you could say, in the sense of getting this piece to be created, and so that hasn't really been while it has been challenging, I wouldn't say that has been my difficulty. What my difficulty has been, I think, creatively, at least with this role specifically, because it's an hour and a half long show, and he doesn't really leave stage for more than 5 or 10 minutes, maybe not even that. He's pretty much there the entire time. And for me, you never want the audience is, well, I mean, the most important person on stage is your acting partner, but the audience is pretty important, and even with your partner, you have to be able to keep things not excited but engaging, and you can't keep things, one note. And finding this huge arc that Jackson goes through or has throughout the show has been and still is something I will be working on probably until we close. And to truly find that, and to not, I don't want to say keep things interesting, because that totally exploits the show and makes it sound like this is all for an entertaining purpose when it's really not. It's about telling the story. But as in life, you don't go through things monotoned. You don't go through things at one pace. And so finding the honesty in this sort of political satire of this, of this vision of Jackson, which is pretty radical in the display of it in the show, and how they go about doing it, and finding the honesty in that, and finding, I don't know, a balance between this like aggressive, angry man and someone who just is really just passionate about what he wants and just doesn't care about who he pisses off to get it. So, just trying to find the love and hate balance, I guess, with this character.
And for me as a director, I think it's important. You'll find a lot of people, if you get an actor, just basics. If you learn your lines, exit here, you could do a lot of work, but if you present an actor, an artist, with a challenge that they're hungry for, they're going to want to attack it more.
Yes.
And so for me, it's how do I make them more enticed to want to accomplish this? How do I make them want to showcase their art? And that's make them work for it. Make them work for something that they can't easily accomplish. Because if it was easy, then why would you do it? Like, go for something that's worth working for, so that at the end of the day, you feel vindicated as if you told that story as best as it could. You gave the audience everything you could. And so I think presenting a challenge to an artist is what they're hungry for. People don't want to just be able to color by numbers. They want to be able to draw outside the line sometimes.
How long has it taken to get the project ready? From the time you pick the script up and start thinking about it in your head?
I got the script in April. Is that when I auditioned you?
Mm-hmm.
I got the script in April. Auditions were in May, and we've been in process since the second week of May.
Yeah, I've had the script since end of April, mid-April. Was it March or April?
Regardless, we'll still be. There's
a solid 2 or 3 months of planning.
Right, and because there's so much into this show, it's not. Nick said it. It won't be completely finished to the last detail. Probably until opening night, when it all finally comes together. I mean, the base of it, they're blocking and everything, but all the extra stuff and the finite finessing, that's what we get for the next 2 solid weeks of just running the show and really finding what makes this thing live and breathe.
And then when you don't really find the true essence of a show until you're performing it, because then that's when you're all by and doing with an audience, but that's when you're all on your own. That's when it is up to the artist, the people on the stage, to create the story and to tell it truthfully. And for me, especially in these short runs that we get in community theater here, 12 shows, I mean, it's the 12th show that you finally get it. Mm-hmm. It's the 12th show where everything finally clicks, and then it's done. So it's a process, and this show will definitely grow. What
are some of the frustrations that go along with taking on something like this?
Well, it's community theater, so while it's one of the most rocking...
You just want to take your cane and whack somebody?
We at Players by the Sea, they have a saying that there are no problems, only new solutions. We have been presented with many new solutions. It's community theater, so while no one's getting paid to do this, it's all their hard work. That's why you have to present a challenge to actors, so they can feel like they're working towards something for a reason. You have to realize all the people, costumers, everything else, they're volunteers. They're not getting paid to do this. So you present this also problems of scheduling and normal life happenings, and you can't keep people to a promise of volunteer.
Yes.
Volunteer when you can and how you can. So that's been I would say that was really probably the biggest
frustration.
And that's saying a lot for this theater. I mean, it's really been a smooth process for the most part in comparison to other shows that I've been in.
Yeah. It's just a technical frustration, in my opinion.
It's technical
It's
stuff.
technical. It's not really anything having to do with the performance, because it's just such a not intricate show, but it is intricate.
There's a lot. I mean, this one, it takes a lot. I mean, you could really, right now, if we put ourselves up with just the actors in black clothing and, you know, just something bare stage, you'd get the story, and it would still be highly entertaining. So the stuff is adding on all the extra, like, nuances and all the scenery and the atmosphere, which is really important for this, because it's not just on the stage. We're really transforming the entire theater space, from the audience to the lobby, so that people are immersed in an event and not just a show.
At an event. Yeah.
Well, how many costume changes do you go through in the course of the show?
Me personally, I have the least.
He has the least costume changes.
I have the least costume changes, because there's not really time to change costume.
2?
I think there's like 2, but it mostly his costume, correct me if I'm wrong, starts out as this, you know, more white and open. I don't even say it represents innocence, although it could. And then throughout the show, as the blood starts spilling, he just gets red, and at the end he's just in this dark red shirt that's just been like drenched in blood.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you, as an actor, you know, leaping into this role of somebody that's so well known, like, how do you tap into that? Like, are there things that you can tap into in your own heart that helps you access that character?
Yeah. Well, what I did with, you know, taking on such a iconic and historical figure was I got the facts, I got who he was, I got his storyline, and while this show doesn't, it has factual things in it, but it takes its liberty to create Jackson's story to be a lot more entertaining and a lot more funny, and so I used that in a sense. Like there are parts where he goes off on Congress, or goes off on these huge political figures, and you find out why, and there are historical reasons why he's getting so mad about this. So I mean that sort of fuses that. But then also, I mean, everyone knows what it's like to fight for something you really want. Like everyone is, even if it's as simple as when you were 6 years old and you wanted this toy and you were gonna had a temper tantrum in the middle of Toys R Us until you got it. Yeah. And in a sense, Jackson does that. I mean, Jackson throws these temper tantrums that you question. You're like, wait, are you 5? Like, what's going on here? You're this grown man, and you're stomping your feet and pouting. And so, I mean, that's what I think makes this a little bit easier to play, is that Jackson was the people's president, and that he really did display, really represented the everyday man in America, and that he wasn't this, you know, Washington aristocrat. He wasn't this, you know, politician baby that was, you know, born into it. He was a regular man. He watched both his parents die. He was a self-made legend, and that is something that everyone, I think, can aspire to and relate to, even in, you know, smaller aspects. So I mean, yeah, I'm personally a very headstrong person and very ambitious, and not someone who passionate, and not someone who can really give up without a fight over the tiniest things, even if it's like where I want to eat. It's a little petty, but you know, it's something that I think that any audience member can relate to, and especially for me, it's been so easy to channel. Not easy, but just I get where he's coming from a lot of the time, because it's simple. What he wants is very clearly stated, and it's not like there's no beating around the bush.
If anything, for these youthful ideals, the cast is comprised of 14 people. There is a 10-year-old, but it's a very small part. The other 13 I've cast, the age ranges between 18 and 30 is what our age ranges are. So most of the median is in the 20s, which is kind of what these youthful ideals are stemming from, or from this teen 20 angst. And so for me, casting Nick was, you know, he has just been to college for a year, you know, so it's kind of innately built in him. He's got these youthful ideas. He is you know, the target audience in terms of, like, they're the people that we're looking to change things. They're the people we're looking to have that passion, and it's just innately built in them. You're in college, you have that freedom. It's time to expand and go after what you want. So it's really great because it's easy to tap into their natural ambitions and their natural energies, because they're of that target audience, because they're of that age range. So immersing ourselves into these youthful ideas has been quite helpful to have a youthful cast. And it's going to be fun for audiences to see a youthful cast on stage, a huge youthful cast on stage, which generally happens during summer musicals, but this one is really just youth. That's what it is.
What's your favorite and least favorite Andrew Jackson moment?
In the play or in history?
In history.
Ooh. My favorite Andrew Jackson moment is him fighting Charles Dickens, and he loses a bet. So it's not a fight, it's a duel. Jackson had this thing where he would duel anybody whenever they wanted. He was not afraid, and Charles Dickens won this bet, so he got to go first. And he shoots Jackson and hits him. He hits his heart.
Like Dickens, the author?
No.
Isn't that Dickinson?
Dickens.
Yeah, I thought so too when I read that. I was like, Charles Dickens. And he shoots him in the heart, but it ends up hitting his upper rib and not going into his heart, and doesn't kill him. So he's standing there and then just kills Charles Dickens. Just gets shot, shoots him, done. And then Jackson lives with this bullet, and then later on during the Battle of New Orleans gets another bullet in his shoulder, lives with these 2 bullets his entire life.
Wow.
And which is something that sort of reflects his anger too, because he was in constant pain through his entire life. Not only through the lead poisoning from the bullet, but he had these bullets in him, and then hepatitis and whatever else people had back then, sepsis and all that. And he didn't have enough blood. Like they were bloodletting or bleeding out was a really common medical practice back then, and something he believed in firmly. So I mean, he was in all this pain, and he didn't even have enough blood to support it. So I mean, that sort of contributed to his delusions.
He was ornery.
Yeah, but that's my favorite. My least favorite, I mean, would it be cliched? Well, that's the thing is, I don't know if I have a least favorite. It's pretty, I mean, it is, the huge debate is whether what he did to the Indians is that right. Is the Trail of Tears the only solution of what could have happened? But it's what America wanted. It's something that my problem is that my least favorite.
Destiny.
Manifest Destiny, exactly. It's God wanted America to have this land. And we thought that God was giving us this land. And so while it is terrible, the amount of Indians that were killed in this, you can't blame Jackson for it. Or it's a huge debate, so I'm not going to throw that. Don't quote me on that. Sure. But it would be hard to blame him for something that the entire country wanted, and just for well, yeah, it's wrong, but it's what we want, so we're just going to turn our heads the other way.
Yeah. And
so I mean, I wouldn't say that's my least favorite memory of Jackson, but that's my least favorite memory of him of his legacy.
If Jackson were to watch the show himself, what do you think he would like? How would Andrew Jackson review the show?
He'd probably want more booze and more sex.
Yeah, more booze and more sex.
I personally think he would enjoy it, but I really think, being that, I think what's important is we as Americans now, we're obsessed with following the personal lives of pop stars and major actors. And back in the day, we didn't have that. Politicians were the rock stars. They were the pop stars. So it's like this idea of immersing yourself in following this man, and so I think for him it's like watching himself on MTV. So it'd be kind of for him it'd be
exactly
that's not exactly true, but that makes me look good. But I think if anything, more booze and more sex. That would always be Andrew Jackson's. Because one of my favorite stories is what Jen told us last night. Is that what was it for?
It was for some ball.
Some congressional ball that they didn't actually want him at, but he had to be present. So as a fuck you to them, he brought 2 prostitutes as his date. So it's the kind of man who and always wanting to duel somebody. So I really think he would get a kick out of the show because it's really, really pumped up and it's really, really visceral. But
it's clever too. It's not just this exploited caricature make fun of thing. It's very cleverly satirical and just rocking.
Is it hard to I know when you're coming into starting the run of the show, you've got all this energy and you're excited to put out. Is it hard or easy to sustain that excitement throughout the run of a show? By the time you get to show 12, are you still going to be as enthusiastic about it as show 12?
I mean, for me, I only get more pumped up as shows go on. I mean, I don't want to say in the real world, but in professional theater, you run for 8 shows a week. depending on what your contract is. But I mean, like sometimes like I've done 64 shows. I've done 110 shows of High School Musical, which was like the most. That was one thing. That it gets to a point where it can, not in this run, I don't think, but not with this. It all depends on the show. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going with this. It all depends on the show. With a show like Bloody Andrew Jackson, you can keep finding new moments every single time. So even if you were to run this show 115 times, it would only just keep evolving, in my opinion. And I'm someone who just keeps getting more hyped up as it goes along, because especially with something like this, with the publicity it's having, it's like your audience are just going to get more and more hyped up every time, and you have this excited audience to come and see it. It's like, of course you're going to be more. I don't know. I'm not someone who gets sick of it,
but I think that with the nature of a show like this, not just Bloody Blade, it's an ensemble show, very much like Hair or American Idiot or Spring Awakening. The characters are constantly changing. The ensemble plays 10 different roles at a time, so you don't have enough time to really, as an audience member or as an actor, get settled into one role and feel mundane about it. You're constantly changing, so you always have to constantly change your tactics. So the energy is always built in to shows like that. And the pacing of the show and the musicality and the way it's written almost doesn't allow you to have the moments of breath that you have to relax that might find you in a place of I don't know, stagnation. They're completely earned in this show. The moments of pause, the moments of breath, the moments where you can relax for a moment, and what you're taking in is even there and going to hit you on another emotional level that you weren't expecting. So it's kind of like built into the show that you really shouldn't. And with all the physicality that I've had them doing, they don't really have time to not have energy. You need it to get through the show. So, but we really maintain, like in rehearsals, we maintain that. We always try to pick up the energy. We always try to maintain it. I would have to say it doesn't really ever go down. It really doesn't falter. These guys are, and it's a good thing that they're in their 20s because they have that stamina. And that's really what it is. It's coming from them themselves. I don't think anyone's ever going to get complacent in this show. There's not really time to.
Not time to, and it's so fast paced. And the show's an hour and a half. The show's 90 minutes, which is incredibly short for a musical. 90 minutes without intermission. We will have an intermission, but still, it's so fast paced and it's just go 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 that there's not really time to even be bored, I guess. Yeah.
Tell me a bit about your backgrounds in general as performers.
Well, like I said, I went to the University of Florida. I have a BFA in Performing Arts from there.
Are both Gators?
No. I go to school. I go to Carnegie Mellon University up in Pittsburgh.
I started directing there. I went as an actor and then found my passion in directing, and so I directed a few shows there. I moved to New York for a couple years, directed for the Fringe Festival and the Strawberry Festival. I actually came back to Jacksonville to take a bit of a break and a financial stability, because I literally walked across the stage at graduation and got in a truck and moved to New York. Didn't look back, so I paid my dues, but I came here to actually save money so I could go back, and I wound up finding I just got immersed in Jacksonville, and I noticed the changes that were happening, and so I found a home here actually, and so all my theater I've done since I've been here. I did Rocky Horror at the Edge, I did All New People, I did Forbidden Broadway at Theater Jacks, so I've really gotten my chance to really spread out in the theater in this community, and everyone's been really welcoming, so it's been my theatrical, my resume.
I have a very interesting upbringing, I guess. I was sort of born into this. My parents are both actors. My dad's a lawyer too. My mom's a director, actress, and a high school drama teacher at Stanton. But my parents met on the stage of Theater Jacks doing City of Angels in 92, 93. And met during that show, fell in love, got married on the stage, and then had a family. So I was sort of born into this. My mom still to this day directs. She just directed a show at Theater Jacks, and she's directing the next musical at the theater we're doing here. And my dad still acts all around and is beginning to write plays and stuff. So I started doing theater at a very young age. I was a dancer for the majority of my life. I started dancing when I was 3, and then had a tragic accident. I fell down the elevator shaft when I was the summer before my 8th grade, and I had 3 transverse process fractures down my spine. So I had to stop dancing and sort of focus more on acting, which everything happens for a reason, because it's where I found my niche, I guess. Well, I still enjoy, dancing and movement and stuff. But So I started acting and singing more there. Then I went to DA, and I was an acting major, or musical theater major there for 4 years. Did all their shows, kept doing stuff in the community. I was in Reefer Madness last summer at this theater, and then I left and went to school up in Pittsburgh, where I'm studying theater at Carnegie Mellon University, which is a great program. And now it was a fluke how this happened, because I wasn't even here for the auditions or anything like that, and I heard they were doing it, and I called Ron, and I was like, I never met Ron before, so this is our first meeting, and I was like, hey, I'm not going to be in town for the auditions, and I think I'm going to be in town this summer, but I definitely would like to, an opportunity to do this. So we met up, I auditioned, he had the regular auditions, and I ended up getting the role afterwards. But I wasn't even going to be home this summer. I told myself last summer after I left, I was like, I'm never coming back to Jackson. So for longer than 2 weeks, longer to visit the family and then get home. But this was such an amazing opportunity that I couldn't really pass it up. And once you live in Pittsburgh for a year, you start to really, really appreciate Florida weather and the beaches. Really appreciate it. So it's really nice spending the summer here. But yeah, that's sort of my background, I guess you could say.
How do you guys prepare for a show, like the 5 minutes before you have to go out there? What are you thinking about? Do you have any rituals or habits or anything like that?
Yeah, I like to I like to center myself. I do a lot of meditation, and I like to just balance myself, become fully present with, because that's what acting is you can't act honestly if you're not present or living in the moment. So the 5 minutes where I just like to sit really quietly in a room, center myself, find honest presence, I guess you could say, and just sort of live and just make sure I'm as open and as free as possible before I walk on stage and I get all these things thrown at me. So that's just like center myself, I think is the best way.
Yeah, I find that I feel like the cast as a whole is going to want to center themselves and really take a moment to check themselves, because the show is very complex in terms of how many characters they have to play, and very physical. And like we said, there's lots of energy going into it. We have a very regimented rehearsal. We start every rehearsal with a 30-minute conditioning. I want to make sure they're in shape, and I can trust them when they go home, but at least I see it in front of my eyes. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure they're in shape, so we go through a 30-minute intense conditioning before we start any rehearsal, no matter what we're doing, whether it's just vocals or blocking or choreography, always 30-minute conditioning. And then it's an hour and a half of whatever project we're working on. We take a break, another hour and a half, and then we talk about it at the end of rehearsal. So they have a very and they all have we have our little things and games and stuff like that bring us back together and check us. And we do have a child in the cast, and he's very much a part of the family. He's not just an addition. Everyone really welcomes him, and he is a great little actor. People should really keep their eye on this kid.
Who does he play?
He plays Linkoya, which
the Indian boy.
The little Indian boy.
My adopted Indian child.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he's a really, really great. You don't see him that often in this show, but it's for a reason, because the moments you do see him are quite visceral, and they really hit at your heart. And this kid knows what to do to get. He knows that face. He knows the intonation, and he's only 9.
Huh? 9?
He's 9 years old.
Wow.
9 years old.
Yeah.
Brilliant ballet dancer. I think when he was 7, he was in Tommy, which was the musical at Players by the Sea. And what a professional child. I've never met a kid he knows all of his lines, he's off book immediately, he knows all the choreography, he likes to condition and warm up with them, so
nice.
He's a top-notch little kid there.
Yeah, he is. Really lucky to find a kid like that.
His name's Dante. He's just him and his family. He comes from a very supportive, artistic, intelligent family who've really immersed their children in whatever exposing them to as much as they can, and it really shows. It really shows that these kids aren't someone who's plopped in front of a TV or in front of an iPad or anything like that. They're thought to think outside of the box, which is quite evident, and people really appreciate it.
Yeah,
fantastic. Right. I think I've got enough information. I'd like to take a couple of pictures of you, though. Take one while you're sitting here. If you don't mind, I'd like to walk up to Jackson statue and get a picture of you guys.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
For the statue.
Totally.
I'm down.
But I'm sure they're going to use like one of the promo pictures in the story. But I always like to just have a bunch of pictures, stuff to choose from based on how they want to lay it out.
I'm sorry.